Hello, everyone. It's December 26th, 2023, and this is the weekly Backdrop Developers Meeting. We get together every week to talk about priorities and issues that the Backdrop project is working on. We'll do some quick introductions before we get started. My name is Nate Lampton, quick sketch on the internet, core committer for the Backdrop project. We'll go to Luke and then Martin.
I'm Luke McCormick in San Ramon, California. I'm just the backdrop man about town. I'll check it out better words. I'll go short.
Thanks, Luke. Martin and then Jen.
Hi, I'm Martin Price. I'm a web developer in Northeast England and Backdrop Contrib developer as well.
Thanks, Martin. Jen and then Irina.
Jen Lampton from Oakland, California.
Thanks, Jen. Irina, and then finally Justin.
Irina Zaks, 40 minutes drive from Oakland, California, still Bay Area.
Thanks, Irina. And Justin?
Justin Christopherson in Denver, Colorado. Help out with the infrastructure when I can.
All right. Thanks, folks. All right. Well, let's see. It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on the meeting, and this was probably announced last week, but I feel like it's worth saying anyway that Backdrop 124 was released 2 weeks ago. Yay, that was so exciting. Got a new minor release out there of Backdrop Core. Also, I missed January 15th. Actually, I guess I didn't miss it, but that was the release date of Backdrop 124. But that was also Backdrop's birthday, which Backdrop turned. Hang on, let me think about that. How old is that? 8? So anyway, yeah, another year gone by of Backdrop, Backdrop doing its thing. Okay, let's see. We've got some things that we have to talk about, but we have a little bit of a priority. Irina is only going to be with us for the next 20 minutes, and she has an issue that she'd like to talk about. It's issue 5496 related to upgrading from Drupal 7. And Irina, I'll go ahead and let you take the stage if you want to frame this particular problem for us and what sort of action you think we can take on it.
Happy to do that, and thank you very much for looking at this issue. This came up several times when I was importing Drupal database into Backdrop instance, following the steps described in several instructions. Every time I hit the same problem, I usually work on Pantheon. So I don't know whether this issue is specifically related to Pantheon version of Backdrop or it is a generic thing. This weekend, I spent configuring MAMP on my new laptop, so I will also try to replicate it locally. But because lots of people that we are supporting will be moving their sites within the Pantheon system, it would be really important if we can solve this issue. So I think that both it is reproducible error. It happens. So first step is I import the database and it works fine. And then when I start running update or update PHP, I get this error consistently. And it happens when I import a database in 2 different ways. One way is if I use backup and migrate, which is foundation for D2B module. I think it's going to take more time to complete D2B modules. I don't want to talk about it today. But for now, if I'm working completely through new Backdrop UI, I can say, okay, import this database and then run core update PHP. And then I have this error message. And then the next thing I need to do is I need to get on Pantheon through Terminus, which I need to have set on my machine if I'm doing it, and run this one MySQL command. And then the upgrade works correctly. So there was this issue that has been discussed that theoretically this should be working. So probably something is not triggering this conversion correctly. And this is definitely above my developer level. I'm not even close to that to do actual troubleshooting.
Mhm.
But I can reproduce an error and I can demo it if needed. And use case is the same whether I import it through backdrop and migrate, which is ideal scenario, or if I import it directly through Pantheon import database utility.
When you say, I think this has come up a couple of times. First of all, let's kind of frame this a little bit. This looks like it has specifically to do with this update regarding the URL alias table when language was renamed to Langcode. Oops. Which, by the way, this is one of the changes that we inherited from Drupal 8 before we forked. This is something that
Not our fault.
had we structured our project around Drupal 7 compatibility from the very beginning, this change probably wouldn't have been
Wouldn't
made in
have
the
made it.
first place. But there we go. That's in the past, and Backdrop now uses Langcode instead of language pretty much everywhere in its database tables. Yeah, converting it is something that happens usually during the update.php process. It looks like there's a couple of other things in here, Irina, that are mentioned besides just the Langcode. Something about, let's see. There was something about unknown column Langcode. Oh, here we go. Like duplicate entry for permission, apparently. But I think that this is the main thing we're talking about here is this, right? Language
Yeah.
versus Langcode. Okay.
I think that the other comment, it is my comment, and I am sure that I can simply delete it because it is a completely different. I don't think it's a good idea to mix too many things into the same.
Right.
It looks like IndigoZilla identified where this update is supposed to happen in Backdrop, and it's not actually in an update function. It's an update prepare bootstrap, which might not happen if you are either using backup and migrate to import the database, or maybe if you're running the update on an existing Backdrop site. So there might be some order of operations issue there, because if you upgrade the way you're supposed to upgrade, it works, but if you're trying to do it into an existing Backdrop site, it doesn't. And so what we might need to do is build some extra utility into the migrate D2B or whatever the module is to sort of mimic the behavior that would happen if you did the normal upgrade process, to make sure that that happens in doing this alternate upgrade process also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because this is stuff that happens even before update hooks get called at all.
Right, right.
Yeah. Like making the state database table. Yeah, but here's the conversion here. So yeah, that's kind of the question, is why
would it not be called
would it not
under
be
those
getting called?
circumstances?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this Fibonacci article. So these are the steps that you followed, Irina?
Not only I followed them, I wrote. Not only I followed them, I wrote them.
Oh, you wrote them. Okay. These are your steps. Okay, excellent.
I wanted to send a huge thank you to Alejandro. Say, oh, when somebody quotes my article to me, this is a real fame. Now I'm like, so this is exactly the same thing. If you scroll further down, so this is just like rough outline about a year ago, and known issues and errors are, this is where I have this command which I just simply copy paste every time.
Okay, so
And I
here's
did,
the error.
yeah.
Yep.
It's the same thing again and again. For the first time, like, oh, maybe I do something right, maybe I do something. But by now I know that this is the problem and the solution.
Okay. Yeah, this doesn't look to me like it would cause problems. However, it is also not the steps that I would normally use. So, yeah, this is, I mean, makes sense. You use the backdrop upstream on Pantheon,
Yep.
and then you install backdrop, but then you wipe everything out, which should get you back to 0, right? It should totally
Mhm.
just give you the code, and then you
Yep.
don't have any files or any database.
Mhm.
Import your Drupal 7 database and import your
Yep.
Drupal 7 files and run update.php. That seems like it should work.
But because that's a prepare bootstrap function, like, is it checking something in the bootstrap process to see if it's already a backdrop site? And maybe that thing it's checking isn't like the database schema, or like how does it know whether it needs to run that update or not? Like there might be something in there it's not.
Yeah, so yeah, the check here is like it's checking the system table to see the checking the system table to check its schema version. And so if the system module has a schema greater than 7,000, then that's when it should do this check. So yeah, it sure seems like, I mean, it doesn't actually have this error
Fire
because it
schema.
actually runs the update. And
Could that
so
be cached somewhere on Pantheon? We could, like, when we run the check, we might be pulling the Drupal, like the backdrop version instead of the Drupal version after the database update. Like maybe there's some database cache clear that isn't happening.
yeah, I wonder if it's something like importing the database into Pantheon doesn't quite wipe it out entirely. Like maybe there's a table that you know, like maybe Pantheon, when you import the database, doesn't drop the entire database and then re-import it. Maybe it drops every individual table and re-imports every individual table. And there's something unexpected, perhaps, like maybe Backdrop doesn't create a table when you install it, but Drupal had a table when you're upgrading it. And so like there's like a stray table sticking around somewhere that Backdrop is encountering that's not expecting. But I don't know, we need to check that.
I can try to check this because when I drop the tables, right, on Pantheon, I can check if there's anything still in the database or it is completely blank. That's something that I can try to do probably tomorrow. Alternative, maybe the problem is that some tables are stuck there and something is not being checked, because when I restore using backup and migrate, I get exactly same error. Not something similar, I get exactly the same error, but when I know that when I'm doing backup and migrate, we're not dropping the whole database as far as I know. I think it's being replaced. So some parts of some tables stay there and the other get replaced. And I think it is more important to me that backup and migrate works than the Pantheon thing works, because backup and migrate makes it universal for everyone.
It seems like if you're using backup and migrate, like Pantheon might not know to clear its like Redis cache or whatever. But if you're using the Pantheon UI, it definitely should. So if there's some weird kind of like caching issue that shouldn't happen with the Pantheon interface, but might happen with backup and migrate. I don't know how backup and migrate works. It is entirely possible, but like what we're checking is the schema version in the system table. Like that's not in a random table that could have been like left around, like that would be a very easy thing to check. I'm just thinking if maybe the where it's reading that value from on Pantheon might not be where the Drupal 7 database just wrote it.
Yeah.
Could it be a race condition where it's written it somewhere, but it hasn't updated the cache of it, and it's grabbing the value from a cache?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like if it previously cached the backdrop schema version. But I don't know how, I don't know, like you'd think that Pantheon's UI would know to clear all the caches when you did a database import through it. Like that seems like something very unlikely for them to overlook.
Yeah. Well, it looks like everybody in this issue so far, what we're kind of seeing a lot of is that people are saying, well, I haven't encountered this issue, but I'm also not using the same steps you're using, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that that's kind of the trick here is that we need one or the other. And honestly, I kind of think that it would be nice if someone other than Irina tried to follow these steps and did exactly what Irina is doing because it's well documented, and then we could encounter the same problem and get a grip on what's happening here. Because even though these aren't like our official installation instructions, it sure seems like they should
It's
work.
close enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, well, we should be working with it, every situation we can to make this easier. And so even though this isn't like it's on Pantheon and not on a local host or whatever, like we should be able to make this work.
I'm happy to update description. So instead of using Pantheon, we're using backup and migrate, because I'm sure that if it can be fixed for using backup and migrate module, it will be much better, because then it will work for everyone,
Yeah,
not just
that
for
would
specific vendor.
that would be helpful to document that whole setup too, because I think from what I'm seeing in this issue, like people are understanding how you're using backup and migrate to do an upgrade, and I don't really get it either, like because of the backdrop site wouldn't actually be running in order to run backup and migrate. So are you using backup and migrate from a Drupal 7 site to like
No,
push the
no. Why don't we do the following? I'm gonna, why don't I give me till tomorrow? I can probably do it tonight. I can update same use case with using backup and migrate and put the testing. I will put in steps to reproduce. Instead of saying follow these instructions, I'm gonna update them to working for the generic backdrop installation. I will do a little bit more homework. If it turns out that this is only Pantheon problem, we still will need to look at it, but then we will have better testing steps and it will be easier to look at.
yeah.
And developers meeting is every week, right?
Yep.
So there's enough time between now and next week for me to check in, because my hope was to do something maybe at MidCamp, maybe at Florida, depending on how quickly this can be solved.
You can come to office hours on Wednesdays too, if you want. This is the kind of
I can
kind of thing
try,
that-
but I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I will make a note for myself to update this issue tonight with backup and migrate setup. And then there will be update in the node, and then if somebody can test it on their local install, that would be good test.
Yeah, having it locally will help a lot too,
Mhm.
because then we'll be able to use debugging tools and like change the code like more easily rather than FTPing into Pantheon or something like that. So that would definitely make things a lot easier, I think, for testing.
Absolutely, and great news. As of this weekend, I have MEM Pro working on my machine, so I'm like, happy collaborator with local development.
Great. Okay.
Well,
Well, thanks for being here, Irina. If you need to drop, thanks for joining us. We'll kind of
thank you so very much. Yeah, I have 2 minutes and I need to get to another place. So thank you very, very, very much. And I'm looking forward to continue working here.
Yeah, thanks, Irina, and thank you, of course, for working on the soft landing initiative and for giving some presentations at Florida and MidCamp. That's fantastic for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm not flying to Florida area. Gosh, my brain is team is flying, but I definitely plan to be in Chicago. So thank you guys for making it's all happy web developers is a great place to be. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in a week. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Thanks, Irina. All right. Let's see. Does anyone else have? I know I started before the recording. Does anyone else have issues they'd like to talk about specifically today? Something that jogged your memory while we were having that discussion?
Irina's experience there prompts me to want to look into sort of a GUI based upgrade process. But
yeah, I'm not sure if you've heard of this project called D2B. She mentioned it a couple of times, just in passing there. D2B is Drupal to Backdrop. It's a contrib module that Doc Wilmot wrote that is exactly that. The concept being that you install a backdrop site, you install the D2B module. I think it might be called D2B Migrate. Is that right, Jen?
Something like that. I think it might be migrate D2B.
No, it is D2B Migrate. D2B underscore migrate. Yeah, here's the link to it in the Zoom chat. But yeah, it's a contrib module. You install the backdrop site, and then the D2B module then takes the database parameters for your Drupal site and then runs it. My understanding of what it does is it imports the database into your backdrop database and then runs the update.php hooks on top of the Drupal 7 database. So just instead of running through update.php, which, importing a database can be a tricky thing for a new person to do, you get the user interface of Backdrop to import the point at the database. It gives useful error messages like, password is incorrect and stuff like that, so that you can get connected to the other database, and then it runs the update hooks against the imported database. And then when it's done, my impression is that then it flips you to the new imported site instead of the backdrop one that you started on. So I think it destroys the backdrop site like in the process of running it, and it makes a new backdrop website that is then based off your Drupal 7 one. But yeah, it's a novel approach to this kind of problem.
it sounds great.
Let's see here. I'll share my screen again just to show this. Okay, so here's D2B Migrate. And Irina is particularly interested in this because she really likes, like many people do, user interfaces for things. And even if ultimately it's doing the same thing as, running 3 command line things, to her that's like totally worth it, because don't make me touch the command line. And I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to be asking of web developers, or people that aren't web developers, right? People that just want websites. I think having UIs for everything should be an objective of ours.
I agree.
Okay, yeah, and then there's this set of instructions which are great. So, okay. Let's see. Well, now that 124 is out, we can start talking about 125 issues, which right now, 125 is super sparse because, you know, it's just the bumped issues from 124. And so the items that we've got in here are field group functionality in core, alt and title fields for the image type, and then this new issue that I think cropped up here. So I guess it didn't get bumped. This is new. Alt attributes should be enabled by default on new fields and have an option to set alt and title attributes as required. Let's see. Jen and Martin, since you guys are here and these are yours are the first two issues, do you guys want to talk about these items at all?
Sure, I'll just do a quick update on field group. Is that in the last cycle, we had the field group module mostly converted to a core module, but there was a bunch of weird stuff in it that we didn't have any existing core patterns for, like horizontal tabs and accordions. And both of those things could have been solved in any number of possible ways, like a custom library or an existing library for either of those. And so there was also some weird behaviors about, like, you could make collapsible divs, and that had a library included. And so there was just a lot of stuff in there that sparked some conversation about, like, do we really want to have this kind of thing in core? Because this is the kind of thing that, though people are currently using it in field group module, doesn't really match any of the patterns that we already have. And so a new recommendation was made that we add, like, the most common use cases for field groups into core. So that would be like field sets and divs and details, or there's a subset of them. And in core, we already have vertical tabs. So we can include vertical tabs. So everything that we already have supported in core, we would just write an API that would allow you to use an existing group element to add a group. And then that way, all of that group functionality would be of core, but anything that wasn't already supported in core, like a horizontal tab or an accordion, could remain in field group. And then if you were upgrading from backdrop 124 to 125, there would also be a version of field group module that was like the next major version that would essentially relinquish control of those field groups that went into core to manage. And all of the stuff that it is currently managing, a horizontal tab or an accordion, would continue to be managed by field group module. And that would allow us to clean up the API a little bit, make it work more consistently to some of the other core APIs. And the contrib module could just switch from using the current format of the API to the new version for the types of fields that are already in core. And if they wanted to do there are other ones that way too, they could. And it would allow us to get something that would be more stable and less contentious into core, more lightweight, and it would solve the majority of the use cases. But if people did still want accordions and other stuff like that, the field group module would still be there to provide those features. And so it sounded like between Nate, Herb, and myself, there was general consensus to move in that direction. And so the issue got bumped to 125 to rethink how to clean that up for the next version.
And in this approach, all of the field group functionality would go directly into field module. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or fields UI module. I don't remember, but yeah,
probably some combination of both.
Combination, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Let's see, alt and title fields for the image file type. Martin, you'd been advocating for this one, but looks like what's going to happen here? Is this issue going to be split up into multiple?
Yeah, I think that's the idea. I did try, but whereas when I moved the stuff into the top, I was able to. I think some things happen with the permissions, so I can't edit the top bit anymore. So I'm not sure whether I could possibly create a new issue that had a kind of meta and then split out, or I don't know why the permissions have changed, but at the moment because otherwise the list will end up being right at the bottom, which might not be a bad thing. I don't mind, but at the moment I can't edit the top bit to split it out into like tasks. So I kind of tried and then wasn't able to, and haven't got back to it to look at another way. But I think that's the key thing. If we split it out and possibly, I guess it's put the allowed to store the Alton title in the files first, and then look at the different journeys from nodes, how it gets there. But I think it's possibly optimistic to say it would go into the next one, because it needs quite a bit.
Yeah, because we have a good set of instructions as to the way we think things should work, requirements, but then exactly how those things would be achieved, we haven't even started yet. Yeah.
I did check the permissions, and you are a member of the group that should have access to edit that issue. Can you try it again? And if it still isn't working, let me know, and I'll try and see if there's something else on GitHub that might be causing that.
No, I've just got copy link, quote reply, report content in that top box.
Huh.
But I've obviously have edited it before. Is it because was I assigned and then not assigned or something?
That shouldn't.
No, that
Yeah.
doesn't seem to be it.
Can you assign it to yourself?
I can try.
Because that should be the same.
Reload the page.
That should be the same
No,
permission,
it doesn't
I think.
change. Doesn't change what I'm able to do.
That's very
I've
strange.
edited it 3 times, the last one being on November the 3rd, but I haven't been able to edit it since, which is really odd.
Huh.
Well, do you mind if I move on to other issues while
Yeah, it's
we're working
fine.
that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
An issue that I'd like to take on is this one here. Allow limiting allowed text formats per field instance or per content type. It's actually more accurate to say per field instance. But the concept here is pretty simple. That's just when having this drop-down select list of the available text formats, we should be able to limit that on a per field basis. And my preferred way of setting these things up is that I often like to set up fields that only allow one text format at all, and that makes the entire select list disappear. And this is frequently done for things like a caption field or I don't know, like a short description, like within a card or something like that, where you want to allow like links in italic and bold, for example. So you've got a really small set of options in the toolbar, and you definitely never want to allow something like, tables or images in this situation. It's just a small snippet of HTML. And because it's a small snippet of HTML, it's not really based upon your level of permission. It's based on where this content is going to be used. And so you shouldn't have any options for changing the text format to anything else. So this particular project, or this particular issue, has a pull request. I think BW Panda filed it, a couple years ago. And I'd like to pick this one up for 125. This one that I said once I complete this other issue was user descriptions for roles. So that got done. So yay. I kind of had hoped to get started on that in the 1 24 cycle, but the user permissions thing took all my time. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this as 125 since I wasn't the one that marked it in the milestone in the first place, and add myself as an advocate. The other thing after this one, because of course there's always another thing, right? The other feature after this one that I'd really like to take a look at is also kind of related to Field UI, and it's making it so that non field things, field extra fields that are displayed in Field UI can have settings. And specifically, I want to make it so that we can move the title field up and down amongst the other fields, and also move the title settings from the content type form over to the field list, so that you can say, like, you know, show the label or not for the title, or move it up and down. I'm trying to think what other title settings there are, but that should be a bit more of an ambitious feature. Anything around modifying Field UI maybe itself isn't so difficult, but the way that we have to accommodate for backwards compatibility is constantly tricky. So this one here, text formats per field instance, though, seems to be fairly straightforward. There's already a pull request for it. We do have a contrib module we need to accommodate for, but BW Panda is also the author of that. So I think that he's already started making those kinds of accommodations, I think. So that's all I've got. I think to talk about today that I knew I wanted to talk about. Is there anything else? Okay. Well, why don't we close it for today then? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to those people out there on the internet that watch these videos. I'm really hoping we get those updated instructions from Irina. The offer of her to give presentations on behalf of the Backdrop community, I think really is super valuable. I'd like to repay her somehow for the time that she's putting in there promoting Backdrop, because honestly, if there's one trade that I would give like any day of the week, it's like if we could trade a little bit of development time for a little bit of marketing time, I would do that 100 times because we usually have no shortage of developers and marketing opportunities. Although they are abound, like we need people to execute on them. So seems like a good deal to me. All right. Anyway, that's all. Thanks for listening to my thoughts, and yeah, we'll catch everybody next week. Thanks so much.